everyone, this is Nerd Mela. I am Brahma Vadani and I have with me Sara and Shekhar.
Hi.
Hello.
So let's get straight to point. In today's discussion, we will talk about some crime stories, real life incidents that show the flaws in India's criminal justice system. And first of all, why are we talking about this today? The horrible gang rape that we all know that took place recently in Telangana, and then the encounter which happened just 2 days ago, encounter in courts, I must say, of the 4 accused by police. And there have been many people who have celebrated this move, saying that justice has been delivered. And Samajwadi Party MP Jaya Bachchan, who had earlier called for lynching of the accused, she said that she said about the encounters that it is better late than never. And it's not just her, there are many other leaders who have said that what the Cyberabad police did is correct. But that's the important part of the question, is it?
Yeah, the important question is, at the center of this debate is whether the solution to this frustration with the police system is this cold-blooded murder of the accused. And there are people who will say that they are accused of such a heinous crime and they deserve it. But under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, that is right, we have the right to life, and under which the Supreme Court has interpreted that each and every one of us has a right to fair trial. So when police encounters the accused in any situation, they take away that fundamental right which is guaranteed to every citizen by our constitution. And if there is flaw with the police, I mean, the problem with, we are so frustrated with this criminal justice system because it takes so long, and many other times the conviction rate is very poor. So if police and the whole system has so many flaws that it is unable to execute it properly, then why are we giving it arbitrary powers to do this instant justice? And then if India is adopting this instant justice system, then how does judiciary stand in amidst of all this? What are its roles now? Now if we are agreeing to this instant justice system, and it is often said that citizens should be very careful when they are ceding certain powers to the government or to the state, because once a power is ceded, then it is
very difficult to get it back.
And here the power by power, one can understand the power that they can arbitrarily decide that they can call somebody
sweeping decision
of shooting down the accused.
Yeah, indeed the incident was very horrible, but we can't let anger decide what course we will take for the fight for justice. And before anything, we should be looking at permanent fixes so that such incidents do not happen in the future. We should look at what all reforms that can be taken into account to fix the criminal justice system in the country.
And I think before that, there are some very basic things that we are repeatedly getting wrong as a country. And the first, of course, would be releasing the name of the victim, which happened this time as well. And if you remember, it happened in the Katwa rape of the minor.
That was also gang rape.
It was also a gang rape. I'm not sure. And also there is this desire for medieval justice system of public hanging and public lynching, and this is in a civilized society this doesn't seem like a solution.
Like what you said, like these calls for public lynching has resonated in the parliament itself. And before we get into the debate about institutions and the role that they play, we should first talk about social responsibilities. Like our role should actually go beyond the condemnations and the bloodlust that happens post such incidents. And it should be more of empathy and concern in these cases. And we'll take an example of the 2012 Delhi gang rape case, where there was a delay in the first response as well. The victim's friend, he was conscious and he had asked for help from people, but no one came forward to help. And the victim herself, she was lying on the road naked, and no one had thought of helping her at that moment. And also another important thing is that the ethical fabric has to be strengthened at all levels. So all in all, when we are demanding justice, we have to take into account the ethical point of view as well.
We can't demand for murder. Eye for an eye will not work.
An eye for an eye makes everyone blind.
That's a Gandhian quote. Yes. In this context, we can take cue from the Rangamilla case in the 1970s. So this was also a very important case, and it also created a national buzz and evoked a lot of emotional response. And at that time, what had happened that two siblings were kidnapped
Yeah.
and they were taken in a car and later on killed. But the public response was very empathetic. Not only later on, as we saw in the 2012 gang rape case, but during that, when the incident was happening, they were taken through the streets, and people were concerned enough to chase the car and then even file FIRs.
Yeah, I guess 3 FIRs, 3 separate FIRs
Yeah,
by 3
yeah.
separate people were filed.
People were chasing the car on the road. I mean, there are so many times that in our daily life we come across things that appear to be fishy, but
How many people would stop and
try and help it. There's so
Yeah.
many. Sometimes there are road accidents, but people do not
stop and help?
uh,
Yeah.
There's something called diffusion of responsibility that takes over the whole thing. Nobody initiates and takes the responsibility and takes the person to the hospital.
And if we see the reactions on social media, we get this sense that people want such things to end. They want that such incidents should not happen again in our country. And this spirit has to be put to right use so that we can find a solution to us collectively.
Yeah, and just imagine if there was a passionately righteous person who was there at that moment when the incident was happening. He or she would have made some effort to set things right, and we can just hope that in such a situation we do have true warriors and not just Twitter warriors, so that these incidents do not happen in the future.
But I think the most important part right now is to know what can be done. And especially in a country like India where there is a comprehensive code for criminal justice system, I don't think so there is a need for a warrior with guns, or we don't need to go out and punch people. It is, basically we all know that there is this very famous saying, knowledge is power. And using this knowledge of criminal justice system procedures and knowing where the flaws are, we can help in channelizing this angst into keeping a check on these procedural lapses which are happening in the country again and again.
So we can see that we have many sound laws in cases, and in certain cases there are stringent ones as well. But while we can outrage and raise voices against these cases, the biggest difference comes through a well-functioning institutional system.
So, first let us understand how these institutions work. First, let's understand the standard procedure that should be followed in any criminal case. For instance, first, whenever crime happens, if a person informs the police, first of all, the police should reach the destination as a proactive
First responder.
Yes, the upholder of law. It should rush to whatever the situation. It should respond first. Then there should be an FIR filed. There should be investigation. Investigation includes collection of evidences, examining witnesses, etc. Then a charge sheet should be framed. Then arrest warrants, etc. And then the under trials are whatever.
The whole court cases and everything.
The trial
begins and the verdict and punishment.
Ultimately.
That should be the procedure. But the flaw in the criminal justice system is very much revealed in these statistics that we can see. For instance, the average age of a criminal case in India is about 15 years. And the NCRB report data suggests that conviction rate in the country is very low in most of the crimes, and the change in crime rate is also visible. Most of the cases we can see that it is higher only. It hasn't gone down much. Further, we can also see that the percentage of due to the delay and the systemic flaws, that percentage of under trials in the jails are more. There are about 2/3 of the people who are not serving sentences but are just under trials.
Now waiting for their case to come in court.
Yes. And then another map shows the proportion of under trials who have been under detention for more than 1 year. And there's so many police encounter cases that come up, such as the Sharabuddin case.
Yeah, the Gujarat.
Yes. and the Simi jailbreak case of 2016 in Madhya
Yeah.
Pradesh,
And the Sarkegoda killing
that
recently, the
we
report
had
that
a
came
report.
out. Chhattisgarh, yeah, that was
Sarkegoda.
also, yeah.
Okay.
So over the course of this discussion, we will explore the systemic flaws that have failed the victims multiple times, and all the cases that we are discussing, they are all
the
recent
recent one.
cases. And the first case that comes to mind is the 2017 Bhopal gang rape case.
Yeah, it's bizarre because the police initially refused to file an FIR, and when she went to the cops with her father the morning after the incident, they told her that her story sounded very filmy, which is, I don't know, that's beyond insensitive to say that to anyone. And moreover, she had to go to 3 police stations to ultimately get her complaint registered. And when the complaint did get registered, it had been 11 hours after the incident.
And this is despite the fact that her parents are both police personnel who are, well versed with the procedures that are taking place.
As we can see from that case, the Bhopal gang rape case, that even filing a complaint can be, FIR can be such a challenge. That not only the police is not doing its duty in providing protection or ensuring that the women's safety, they are not even proactive in filing a complaint.
Yeah, and when you talk about this case, another fact that's even makes it even worse is that it was actually the parents and the victim herself who nabbed 2 of the accused and took them to the police station, which the whole incident caught the attention of media and then of media. So overall, the police, if you look at it, the police did nothing at all in this case.
So the first step only, when they should have had when they should have responded quickly on filing or on in receiving an information, they did not act. So at the first stage only here they made the mistake.
We can look at another case from Madhya Pradesh itself, the kidnapping and murder of twins from the town of Satna. And when you look at the investigation, there were some serious holes. First of all, the crime itself was committed by the children's tuition teacher, and how was he not on the police radar? And then the children were in the city for 2 days, after which they were taken to Banda, which is a district in Uttar Pradesh.
I mean, this is very basic. That list of suspects would be people who knew about the kids and their daily routine, when they come from school, when they go. And tuition teacher would be an obvious suspect, and this is coming from me after just watching a few crime shows and reading a few crime novels. Like, this is, I guess this is basic understanding.
So this reveals the flaws in the investigation stage. That not only, because in that case what happened is that the criminals were in the town while they had taken some action of preventing the traffic mobility, etc.
Barricading the entrance.
Barricading the
Yes. And exits.
But they did not examine the neighborhood properly. They did not go into they did not conduct proper investigation. So here and how would they collect evidences if they are not narrowing down the possibilities properly, the suspect possibilities properly. So this clearly reveals that either the people are not skilled enough to handle these cases, or even if they are skilled, then they are not proper SOPs, that is standard operating procedures that are to be followed, or people not informed about it. We can also take the example of the high profile Sheena Bora case.
And that as well, like around a month after after she went missing, Sheena Bora. Of course, no one suspected anything by then, and we won't get into much details because it's a very convoluted case. But let's talk about the investigation lapses, what we just mentioned. So just about a month after she went missing, a half-burned body was found in Pen village of Raigad district, which is just like 70 kilometers from Bombay. The police were alerted, locals alerted the police, but they dismissed it as unclaimed, the body as unclaimed, and buried it without even conducting basic forensic investigation. Of course, there's this another angle that an IPS officer was key in hushing up the case, which again shows corruption. But again, if we are talking about the procedures, if proper procedure would have been followed, a case should have been registered for murder or accidental death.
Because of this, I think I recently also read a news in which they were discussing the DNA report of the skeletal remains.
So the DNA findings and investigation is still going on in the case that took place in 2015. It's been 4 years now.
And especially when we see that the distance between Raigad and Bombay is just mere 70 kilometers. If there is no coordination at that local police headquarter level, then how are they going to nab criminals who conduct all India activities? And there have been initiatives started, especially after 26/11 attack, that the CCTNS, that is Crime and Criminal Tracking and Network System, was launched.
Yeah.
And there are other initiatives that are being initiated for proper coordination of at least the 11 investigating agencies that we have, which includes the NIA and the CBI and all such agencies. And what benefit can come from this is very much evident if we go through the Ted Bundy case.
Yeah.
So the Ted Bundy case in 1970s came to our attention in the last 2-3 years through a Netflix documentary, and in that the key to cracking the case was that these isolated incident of rape and murder, brutal rape and murder over 2 to 3 states of United States was compiled in a database, and the patterns were identified, and through that they could trace the person concerned. It is only when these isolated criminal incidences are compiled and they are evaluated, large number of links can be unearthed, and then proper coordination system can obviously lead to better management.
So in Sheena Bora case, they failed to collect evidence. But if we talk about the Arushi murder case, which still remains unsolved to this day, they mishandled evidence, like even after it was collected. First of all, the crime scene was not secured. And then another very important thing is that the domestic help, Hemraj, who was earlier considered to be a murder suspect, was found dead on the terrace a few days later. How is it possible that the police did not check the terrace of the building for clues? And then by the time the body was found, it had already started to decompose. So
Yeah. And they had a lot of physical evidence as well, like there were whiskey bottles and a blood-stained footprint. And there were also reports that police collected around 26 fingerprints, but they were not done so in proper manner, due to which only 2 of them could be used, which ultimately did not match to the suspect. And there are many such examples, more examples.
in the case itself, of mishandling evidence.
So evidence collection also has to be done following a standard procedure.
Yeah.
Again, I'd like to quote another example from the US. That is the O.J. Simpson trial case,
which we talked about in our first episode as well.
Yes. So there, because there was improper handling of the evidence, the conviction was not possible. There was this argument that the blood stains were not collected properly using standard procedures, and the murder weapon or whatever, the evidences were carried around over a long period of time instead of being sealed properly. So are we sure that all these procedures are being carried out in India? Because here we see that there, among, like you mentioned, there were 26 fingerprints and only 2 were usable, and then there were so many other evidences. If somebody goes and reads on the different articles, they'll find that there were so many evidences which were missed. So it is important that these procedures are standardized, then only the forensic results will be more accurate. Once investigation is done, then the case goes to the court. Here the prosecution has to prepare witnesses. Now we can talk about the Jessica Lal murder case here, how such a widely publicized, or rather such a murder which had so many witnesses could not even have a single witness to testify in the courts. There was a period when almost all the witnesses had gone hostile, which led to that Jessica situation.
The acquittal of the suspects.
So and then in the Unnao case, the Unnao rape case, how we've seen that the victim's father was
picked up by police after the illegal, like on an alleged
after they had actually it had happened after they filed a complaint against the BJP leader for rape, and like you said, the father was picked up for over an alleged Arms Act case,
and he died in police custody.
And later on the victim and her family, they got into an accident, and 2 of her family members also died in that incident, and ultimately there was a call for murder charges to be put up against the BJP leader.
So for fair trial to happen, there is a need for recording of evidences and statements of the witnesses, and the witnesses should feel secure enough to come in front of the court and testify. And give their statements. So and we've seen that how in India, that because of the poor safety standards for witnesses, poor evidence collection, and there is poor witness preparation, so our court cases are such poor conviction rates. To rectify this or to help to address this problem of poor security for the witnesses, a witness protection scheme has been proposed in which, based on the threat to life or the seriousness of the case, there will be a category A, B, C under which the victims would be given some
the kind of protection
they required. Yes.
And when we're talking about standard procedures, the certain lapses can also lead to loss of life. And I think the example of Tabrez Ansari is the one that comes to mind. The 22-year-old was lynched by a mob in Jharkhand who had accused him of theft. And when you look at this case, a number of issues arise. The first being the treatment of someone who was beaten up so badly. He was beaten for 4 hours and he was taken to police post and then presented before a court and then sent to...
Ansari, no?
Yeah. And he was ultimately sent to judicial custody. By the time the entire process had taken place, his health had continuously deteriorated and ultimately he died in hospital 4 days after the incident. And another key finding is that the doctor who examined Tabrez Ansari, when he complained of uneasiness on the day he died, he did not find any head injury. And moreover, police ultimately they even stated that he in fact died of cardiac arrest.
Yeah, there is also this part that in a unilateral decision, police dropped murder charges against the 13 accused, saying that it was not a case of premeditated murder.
Yeah.
And it was only later, after widespread outrage, that the charges were brought back.
Yeah.
So every case does not get the media attention this particular case got.
Yeah.
And there may be so many cases where police may be not following the standard practices that need to be followed, such as not dropping what charges have to be, and everybody is not well versed even to get this or to understand where this detour is being taken or where this thing is going wrong.
I think since we're talking about Tabrez Ansari, which is also another case of custodial death, and given the current scenario, what has been happening in the last few days, this is another case, the 1972 rape of a tribal girl in police custody.
That was a very significant case because it led to this whole women rights movement in the 80s.
Yeah.
There was this case in Maharashtra where a tribal girl was in custody and she was raped. And this case went to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court did not convict the police personnel responsible for this, saying that there might have been consent. This raised a lot of alarm in the society and in general, and the women rights groups in the especially in the 1980s, they vociferously campaigned against custodial rape and custodial deaths, etc., which led to certain consciousness or among the police organizations to check this kind of problems that were taking place.
There was a lot of calls for legal reforms. That was very like that at that moment. That was very essential, considering that you had a Supreme Court judgment interpreting consent in that way, and amongst them, like, just to mention a few organizations, you had the Forum Against Oppression of Women, who they played a key role during the movement in the 80s.
So this incident just reflects that how things that we are ignoring right now may be actually a case of gross miscarriage of justice.
And the previous two cases, we saw that how public outrage actually helped in solving the crime or finding a solution. But it is not always so. Public sentiment, like we mentioned earlier, also cannot drive the fight for justice because there are negatives to it as well.
And one of them, the biggest one I think in recent past, would be the case of the murder of a 7-year-old boy at Gurgaon's Ryan International School. And very soon police claimed to have solved the case, saying that the bus conductor at the school had committed the murder. But later it came to light that he was forced to confess the crime by Haryana police, who had hastily charged him with the crime. Parents in the school and public as well, they had demanded a speedy investigation, and the police too hurriedly pinned the blame on the first person that they could find.
And it's only later when the parents of the 7-year-old boy said they were not convinced with the kind of investigation that the police had done, then CBI took over and they found out that the crime had been committed by another schoolboy.
And the bus conductor, he was ultimately acquitted.
So not only this is a case of shoddy investigation, this also is a case of where police gave misinformation to the media, and it was for I think for several days that the poor bus conductor was so much talked about in the media also, and people were blaming whatnot for this kind of perverted behavior, and they were
theories.
That the boy was sodomized also.
All these things were coming onto.
So all the cases that we just saw right now, we saw that there were certain lapses, avoidable also these were, and which ultimately led to mishandling of cases.
This reflects that the procedures and the practices are not always adhered to. There could be three problems. One is that there is no standardization of these practices. Okay.
Yeah.
And then there could be lack of monitoring of these practices, that how they are being conducted. And the third thing that could be is the rampant corruption in the system, that even the shortcomings are not being recorded and analyzed properly.
So now that we have discussed this, I think the next step would be to see what are the possible reforms, what are the things that we can do as a society, what are the things that police can improve so that such situations do not happen again.
When we discuss police reforms, the first thing that comes to mind is the Prakash Singh case. The Supreme Court has given 7 recommendations. They are mostly related to preventing misuse of power, especially political interference, use of political power to manipulate the system, and the other kinds are more related to misuse of power within the system, that is proper treatment of the victims in custody, and then providing platforms for complaint against the police official by the common citizens.
So if you want to see what the recommendations of the Prakash Singh case are, they are displayed on your screen right now. The next reform would be what we mentioned earlier as well, the integration, the intra-departmental information sharing basically.
So the crime and criminal tracking network system which has been proposed should come into picture now properly. All the police thanas and the different offices should now be properly integrated, and there is also a provision or an initiative that has been taken that a digital headquarters or digital police station is being constructed or created at every district level. So digital training, I mean, after you create the system, there should be people who can use this properly. The lower staff or the lower level staff should be equipped enough to use these digital tools for investigation and analysis.
Then there is also this sex offenders list that has been
All of this could come as part of the whole e-governance initiative that we are looking at.
Especially that sex offender list has in other countries such as US, Australia, UK, it is used, and in India also that can help in, especially with the crime against women. It can help in preventing them.
And then, like we've seen, like we had discussed in a couple of cases regarding the forensic evidences as well. So we certainly need an improvement in the level of forensic analysis and also the quality of equipment. And one of these such things are, what is spoken about is the DNA profiling bill that is being proposed right now.
So currently what has been proposed is that it will be only used for tracking the missing people or the unclaimed dead bodies, etc. But if we move this if we standardize this practice, and if we ensure that it is accurate, then maybe in future we can use it in the criminal justice system more effectively.
And then there is also the need of attitudinal changes in the service.
There should be some service orientation in the police. There is so much fear and there is so much distance between the people and the police. So whenever we think of police department, they are always against the people. They should be serving the people. So we should not feel afraid of approaching the police.
Because they are there to help us actually.
And speaking about this, there's which is kind of linked to what you said. It's also about the openness and information about procedures that are available to the people.
Are in place, right.
Like if, for example, in US
and many other developed countries, that there is clear information on what the procedures are. In fact, there is if we can bring in the court procedures also here. The cases are telecast on the TV, and people through that are able to understand what happens and what the process. In India, everything is so close that unless and until you are personally involved in a case, you do not know what the process is. And even if sometimes you try and get out of it, you don't want to understand it. It's just too convoluted for a common person to understand.
And what you were saying about telecasting of cases, like we were discussing yesterday, the whole anger around, there are certain cases which invoke some kind of emotions from the entire nation. I think when the cases will be telecast, the entire country will also, get some closure. They will see what they will see. Justice happening in front of them, so they will also realize
justice will seem to be done.
Yeah.
Will have been seen to be done.
Then these demands of lynching and all, they would also maybe come down a little, because they will see that okay, this is the procedure that is being followed. People are not just sitting. The accused are being taken to court and whatever.
Also, the presence of political influence is more prevalent in the police than any other system. The misuse of power is so prevalent in police that we've often seen cases how the machinery is used to serve political vendetta and even out rivalries, etc. The Prakash Singh case talks about it.
And one positive thing could be used as community policing. Like, and when we speak about community policing, it talks about linking, having a link between the police and the people. And one such example is the Mahila Police Volunteer Scheme, which it was launched in Haryana in December 2016, and it looks at how they could establish a link between police authorities and local communities in villages. And it would be these police officials would be mostly women who would try to though they would help the community tackle issues related to violence against women. So that is one thing that comes to mind when we talk about effective use of community police to
but community policing should not be mistaken with the moral. Like we have seen the case of Bajrang Dal activists create a ruckus when couples are sitting
in
and
a park
beat them or whatever. So that is
that is not community policing.
That is not.
There's a fine line between community policing and moral.
And another example for community policing would be for senior citizens in several areas. There was this few years back initiative in which police personnel would go and check on the senior citizens weekly or
on a regular basis.
Again, positive community policing example, connecting people to police.
Yes.
And I think in all this, the long-term solution would be approaching the problem through value system, like through education and providing support system.
Yeah.
And this will perhaps then help people understand Gandhian concept of paap se grana karo and papi se nahi, so that people can try and people can channelize their energy to eliminate the paap, that is the wrongdoing, and not the papi.
The person.
The person,
yeah.
And then maybe we can move to a reformative system of law and order, which is the need of the hour.
And on this note, I think we should end our conversation. I'm Brahma.
I'm Sara.
And I'm Sheikh.
If you liked our video, please like, share and subscribe. You can also comment below, leave your suggestions, leave your feedback. And you can also follow us on Twitter at NerdMela. And stay tuned for more. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.